As promised, I did some research into the incident that occurred in Tacoma, Washington that led to the 3 Tacoma PD officers being indicted on murder charges 2 days ago. On March 3rd, 2020, so not even 3 months before George Floyd passed while in police custody, an eerily similar incident took place, and the individual's name is, I am referencing notes because this was not anything I was aware of until just recently. His name was Manuel Ellis, a 33-year-old Tacoma resident. Now, the 3 officers that have been brought up on murder charges all previously served in the U.S. military. I found that an interesting fact. The other thing is that they used a chokehold and restrained Ellis, very similar to the techniques used with George Floyd. Also, he was resisting arrest, though you won't find many articles written that actually go into the detail on that. There is video footage available and audio, but it is nowhere near the quality of what they had for George Floyd's incident. To me, I watched it a number of times. It was very difficult to make out what was actually taking place. But that said, a retired King County detective watched the video footage and listened to the audio over and over again, and he did say that basically the officers, what they did was inexcusable, that there's no mistake about it. What they did was wrong, and he feels confident that these charges are in fact warranted. Witnesses report, they said that the officers attacked Ellis, knocking him to his knees, etc. So again, video footage was very difficult for me to actually understand the full spectrum of what was taking place. Have you guys heard of the blue flu? Well, the very first recorded blue flu took place in 1971 with NYPD officers. It's basically where a large group of officers communicate with each other and they call in sick using sick time, that is blue flu, and it is in protest of something. That did happen with Tacoma PD yesterday. They called in blue flu following these murder charges being brought up on their fellow law enforcement officer. Now, this was interesting and absolutely no surprise to me. So Washington State's governor, Jay Inslee, he actually took this case away from the local sheriff's office and he turned it over to the Washington State Patrol and Attorney General for prosecution. Now, growing up in Washington State, we all knew that the Washington State Patrol officers were assholes, and we would look for the WSP on the license plate, and we would go the speed limit because those bastards will pull you over for going just a few miles over the speed limit. That's my little tidbit there, little side note for you. So let's talk about something else you won't hear on the mainstream media. Ellis was not just this little choir boy as they make him out to be. He actually had a long criminal record, and at the time of death, the the cause of death, it did show that he died from lack of oxygen from being restrained. But like George Floyd, he had a fatal amount of methamphetamine in his system, which dilated arteries. So dilated cardiomyopathy, okay? And it was deemed by the medical examiner, the ME, that it did aid in his death or speed up the death. They didn't say it was the COD, the cause of death, but they did say it was one of the elements that made it to where being in that chokehold triggered these other issues. So for someone like you and I, who don't have lethal amounts of drugs in our system, one, we probably would not be resisting arrest unless someone's trying to arrest me for not wearing a mask. Then I'm going to resist. But you and I likely would be fine because we don't have lethal doses of drugs in our system at the time. Okay, so let's talk about this criminal record that he had. At the time of his death, he actually had an open or a pending charge for robbery. Now, I looked up the robbery definition for the state of Washington because it varies from state to state. And it's unlawfully taking personal property from the person. Okay, no big aha there, but it's by use of force, violence, or fear of violence. So this guy, yes, he may have gone to church. Awesome. He may have sang in the church choir. Awesome. But that's not all he did. That's not all he did. He was a drug addict. He was a criminal. And nothing good happens after midnight, y'all. Anyways, you know, I wish I could see the video because then I could put together a more accurate an opinion on the situation and what I witnessed. But unless there's one out there you can send to me, the one I'm finding all over, it's not quality. So it's unfortunate. I feel that, mind you, timeline-wise, this happened 3 months before George Floyd. Now, you want to ask yourself, why did this one make it out to the mainstream? Why didn't this one make it out into the mainstream? And I honestly believe that it is because George Floyd's had that really crystal clear video footage. That's what I feel. And there was a large crowd. Now, this one, there were a few pedestrians around, or people around that did take some video. But again, it was nighttime and the video quality is nowhere near what it was for George Floyd's, which can be beneficial to the defense. As far as police officers or law enforcement goes, 2 of the officers are white, 1 is Asian, and it's interesting because there were 5 officers in question when this initially was brought up, and at least one of the 2 that didn't have charges filed against him is black. But the white guys and the Asian have charges filed against them. It might not mean anything at all, but to me, just given our climate right now, the racial divide and the climate and the perception that the left is putting out there, charging a black police officer with a crime against a black man might not have fit their narrative. But again, I don't know enough. That's just somebody making an observation. But I think we just need to pray for law enforcement as a collective and understand that our jobs, we don't have someone's life hanging in the balance with most of our jobs. And we also don't have murder charges hanging over our head if we make a big mistake. And we would be fired, right? Not put in jail for the rest of your life. So, just things to think about. All right, send me what you have. I really want to dig into this. It's just north of me. And there goes the city.